Hello and welcome everyone, a new episode of Money Means Business. Investment. The environment of investment here in Egypt. The participation of Egypt into international economic conferences. The rate of Egypt when it comes to economic institutions, international ones. Where are we? And what are the most important efforts exerted on the ground to increase foreign direct investment here in Egypt? To speak about also the public and private sector and how and why the strategic partnership between both sectors is not a luxury anymore. It's a must to reach Egypt 2030. It's our agenda. Well, we are going to speak about so many things, as I do have a very special guest. Right after the short break, I'm going to be back with more, so stay tuned. Welcome back, and we are going to start immediately. But before we start, let me first welcome my dear guest live here in the studio, Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, Professor of Marketing. Thank you very much for being with us, sir. Always an added value to our programs.
Pleasure, Anna, to invite me. Thank you very much.
And sir, as I said in my intro, we do have a lot to speak about. If you permit me, we are going to start directly with the Egyptian participation in the WEF, or the World Economic Forum, which took place recently in Riyadh. And in fact, there was such a heavy participation. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Ministers of Planning, of International Cooperation, of course, respectively, Dr. Hala Saeed and Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, they had their participation, and they had also a lot of discussions even on the sidelines of the forum. If you permit me, I'm going to start with some points which were raised in the speech of Dr. Hala Saeed, Minister of Planning, as she touted economic progress at the forum, and in a special meeting she addressed the impact of recent global events and climate change on sustainable development goals, highlighting the government measures to streamline business operation and strengthen public-private partnerships. A lot of issues even included into those very short phrases. Sustainable development goals, strengthening public-private partnership, the streamlines of business operations. And tell me, what was eye-catchy for you in the first place?
First of all, let me talk about the theme of the World Economic Forum that took place in Riyadh last month. The theme was about the global collaboration, which is, I'm going to address this later, but let's look at the themes to see where Egypt fits. Through the participation of our excellencies, Dr. Saeed and Dr. Mashat. Global cooperation, and then the second one is growth.
Yeah.
And I think also this is very important for Egypt, and Egypt done a lot of improvements economically, politically, and many things. And the third, and that's very important, energy. And we have to know that Dr. Hala Saeed, in her speech, she spoke directly about Egypt was a pioneering in offering green bonds, which means that we offer bonds for investments, but these investments will be for renewable energy projects in
green
Egypt.
Hydrogen.
Exactly. So that's why when I look at the theme, we have also to see how the speeches from both excellencies. Dr. Hala Saeed spoke first of all about the streamlining that the government is doing now. To improve more investments, more foreign direct investment. I think this is also very important to say, FDI in Egypt and the relationship between Fitch, the IMF, the World Bank, and many of the international investors. So this is number one point that got my attention, that she referred to the streamlining of operations and legislations in Egypt to improve foreign direct investment. The second thing, and that was also a request by the IMF, the divestment. And so she talked about that Egypt is preparing 35 public sector companies for their IPOs, so to be offered for sale. And sale here is both, is the private sector Egyptians and non-Egyptian as well. But the know-how will definitely come from the investments by foreigners. She also spoke about the green transitions. So she spoke about the green bonds, which was established or operating starting from 2020. But now we are also increasing the number of projects in green economy. The hydrogen energy, there are two major companies actually. They are in the pipeline now. One of them is an Indian global company, and they are going to produce hydrogen energy in Egypt. And the second one is a very large, is a Singaporean group that is going to produce hydrogen energy in the amount of $8 billion US. So that's an investment here, and then the other one, the Indian one, is going to invest 2.2. That's very important to say, that the diversity that Egypt is talking to about in terms of FDI, it's not just in the real estate. Ras Al Hikma, of course, was a big escape and savior for us for the the hard currency problems that we have. But that's the highlights of Dr. Hala Saeed that really got my attention. the streamlining of Egypt in terms of the economic zones, and that's why Excellency Dr. Mustafa Mabouli, the Prime Minister, actually was proposing amendments that is going to be...
This is something we are going to speak about later, but sir, if you permit me, let's go to dive more into the speech of Dr. Hala Said.
Yeah.
As she mentioned more than once the geopolitical and the geographic location of Egypt, and how Egypt can be more attractive if we know well how to I'm not going to say to propagate, to use our geographic location and to know that we are the gate to Africa, the link between the north and the south of the Mediterranean, you name it. Mentioning that, how do you see it as also a point of strength?
Well, geographically, from history, you know, Egypt is a hub and a middle point between Europe, Asia, Africa. So these three continents, they actually present more than 50% of international trade. So when Egypt is there, and we talk about the development that we're doing, especially in the Suez Canal economic zone,
yes,
and most of the new investments are actually away from real estate. Most of the new investments are going, whether Chinese, whether they are Indians and the likes, they are all into the economic zone. Why? Because we are building a hub in this area to serve the connections between Asia and Europe. I think this is very important. The other important point that Dr. Al also mentioned was that Egypt now is a member of the BRICS.
This was my coming question regarding being in a member of the BRICS. You know, sir, here we are not talking to experts, we are talking to the layman in the street. And many people, when we announced that now we are members of the BRICS, they thought that tomorrow it's going to be something different and we are going to be as developed, for example, as our partners in BRICS, Russia, China, India, you name it. When we can evaluate the importance of our inclusion into such a very huge economic entity?
First of all, what do you mean by Egypt participation in the BRICS? Now it is a full-fledged member. And you have to know that Egypt, before being full-fledged member in BRICS, was part of the owners of the bank related to BRICS.
Yep.
And so that's one. The reasons for BRICS existence is to have what we call it a multipolar economic power. Instead of relying on the IMF and the World Bank, you know, we have this new entity called BRICS. And there are two things the layman may not be noticing them. First of all is the relationship between member country in BRICS.
Yes.
At the government level, i.e. we can now get loans and financing from the BRICS countries through their own currency, trying to shy away from relying on dollar. So that's between countries, government to governments. But what is more important now is the encouragement of international trade between member countries. And we know that there were 5, now they're extended to be 13. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, among other countries are in it. So that tends to strengthen the hard currency, the local currency, of our nation. When and only when this will happen, when we have a huge increase in exports. Because in this case, the demand on Egyptian pound will increase when you have an export increase as well. But as long as we still have the trade deficit between import and export, then we still will rely on hard currency, but definitely it's not going to be on the green or dollar based, which is again a good step to deviate a little bit from benching our pound with the US dollar.
And sir, I think that there are many serious efforts exerted on the ground to reach this aim. For example, when we talk about localizing industry, today there was a very important tour of Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Mabouli to many factories and companies in the 10th of Ramadan. And when he spoke in a press conference right after his tour, he spoke about, for example, the cars components, and he said that 75% now of the car components are totally Egyptian.
Yeah.
So, and here I'm speaking about heavy industry, meaning that it's providing thousands of direct and indirect job opportunities. Is this number, I can consider it as such a big number, or it's only a first step in a long journey?
No, it is a first step in a long journey. let me also shed some lights on the profile of our foreign direct investment. You know, the last one, of course, this is totally, for me, it's obsolete because of Ras Hekma now. The FDI and Ras Hekma will actually accelerate the FDI amount in 2024. But until 22-23, it was 11 billion US dollars. That's the foreign direct investments in that year. Now, we have over 148 billion US dollars in terms of total investments, foreign direct investment in Egypt. That's fine. But what is alarming to me is when we look at that 60% of this FDI is in oil and petrochemicals, which is fine, but we have a lot of opportunities. Egypt is full of natural resources. And the more added value you have, that's why the cars is one of them. IT is another one.
Of course. So
when you look at the FDI, and I see the breakdown, we see that financial segment, they have like 2.13 billion US dollars out of the 11. You have the manufacturing, 3.4. You have the communication and IT technology, it is 800 million only. And then real estate before Ras Hekma was 500 million. But the majority is in oil. Now oil is an international price based. Petroleum, natural gas, and you saw what happened with our reserves in petroleums and natural gas. So it's fine, but our reserve is not that great compared to the OPEC members. So our future is definitely going to be still rely on oil explorations and the like. Partially, but not 60%. And we have a lot of opportunities. The agro industry is actually very, very good opportunity for our exports. Textile. Egypt, cottons and leather are among the best in the world. So manufacturing is the future, especially now we devalued our currency twice. And that should give us more opportunity for better export. And I think the President has all rights to say that his aim is to put our export to 100 billion US dollars. That's should be reachable because other countries like Turkey have passed this number.
Exactly, and when he said that, he asked us not to feel that this is such a huge number.
No,
this
not.
Is something which is not that huge. The sky is the limit. We can achieve it and even more. This is exactly what he said.
Exactly. So that's why I think when you say is it the starting? Yeah, it is the starting of the road, but it's the right direction now. Plus, the renewable energy in Egypt. I mean, we have abundant land. We have abundant resources. We have the sun. We have the wind. And when you go to Hurghada Highway to Cairo, you see the winds actually and the renewable energy.
Sir, I heard that maybe 10 years ago or maybe more than that, when there were some German experts who were here and they visited the new valley or El Wadi Grid, and they said about El Wadi Grid can be a source of renewable energy which can enlighten Germany. Exactly. And they were not lying and they were not exaggerating, but it's the know-how, as you've kindly mentioned. If you permit me, let's return back to the WEF, and this time to go through the speech or one of the speeches of Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, as she also spoke about the green transition, as you've kindly mentioned, and also another important issue, human capital initiatives, reskilling revolution and job initiative, about the gender equality, about taking into consideration that investment in us, investment in the human being, can be the source or the core of any other investment process.
Dr. Mashat actually spoke, as you said, about three things. The green, which also Dr. Hegazy talked about it, the green economy, the green productions in Egypt, which is very important because this is our direction and we have the natural resources to do it, unlike other countries that are on the north or on the south. And the second thing, which I really was fascinated by when she talked about the gender and the role of women in participation in economic developments and growth, especially that the theme, as I said, is growth. And Egypt, if you look at the statistics of the gender, is almost 50-50, 49% versus 51. So women should and are actually playing a good role in economic development in Egypt. And I think there are a lot of political reforms that have been done since the revolution of 2013 have empowered women more politically and economically. And the private sector laws actually they force, actually they dictate on companies to have a gender profile and gender percentage on the board of directors, on the senior managements. And that's part of the governance of Egypt here, which is very important that she stressed the fact that women and the role of women in economic growth and developments, and how Egypt actually is taking the right direction to reassert the power and the role that women should play in growth. The third one, as you mentioned, is human capital.
Yep.
Egypt is 100 million plus.
Yeah.
So it's not only a big market as demand, but it's also a big market for human skills, or human resources skills. And I think the speech that I was really impressed by President Sisi when he talked about, the jobs and the future. And already, Dr. Hala Said also talked in the same forum about the resolution that was already adopted by United Nations to use AI in sustainable development.
This word sustainable, I think it's going to be repeated more than once in our episode, because sustainability is one of the key words. And we are not speaking about something which is going to end next year or something. We are talking about something which is going to remain and to continue being on the ground, implemented on the ground for generations to come.
Yep.
And because of this, I think the word, the climate change issue, renewable energy, was also repeated, because green hydrogen is our tomorrow. And unfortunately, as also you've kindly mentioned, we cannot rely at all on any other source of energy except the renewable energy and green hydrogen.
Yes, yeah.
How do you see this also as not only speaking about Egypt or to use this renewable energy or green hydrogen in our local market, but to turn Egypt into a regional hub for renewable energy and for green hydrogen? And we heard it more than once that, thank God, we succeeded in refueling some of the ships which were passing through the Suez Canal with green hydrogen.
Yes, yeah.
So to succeed in that and to implement that on the ground, this is sending a lot of messages to the whole world. If you want to elaborate on that too.
Well, I can tell you, as we were talking off air, many German companies actually are putting their eye on Egypt for the hydrogen energy. And I know a lot of German investors, along with Egyptian, which is the partnership that Egypt is seeking, that the brains of the two parts, whether Europe or Egypt, will work, because, as I said earlier, the natural resources in Egypt can help us to go in that direction of the hydrogen energy productions. And what is more important than the hydrogen, allow me just to shy a little bit on it,
Sure.
is the technology. Our human resources, they are large in number, but they are until now unskilled in terms of the IT. And so that's why it was an alarming message from the president to stress that the education system, whether in high school or above, have to be aligned with what is going internationally. And you'll be surprised that I received from my friend who worked in the World Bank that there are high schools in the United States that their whole curriculum is all about AI. And that's from the 6th grade to the 12th grade. So imagine the future that our human resources will be competing against those individuals who are actually tech savvy. They are what Dr. Rana Mashar called future-proof skills, i.e. they are equipped for the future. And so it's good to talk about hydrogen energy, but you have also to know that other countries actually have taken very quick directions and steps to go into the future in terms of the human resources skills.
Permit me to answer what you have just said. Only yesterday, or approximately 48 hours ago, the Central Bank of Egypt announced that the fundamentals of fintech is going to be included into the curriculum in 3 of the Egyptian universities, starting from the academic year 2024-2025.
That's great news, yeah. But it's more important to go to the high school level, because our curriculum and I think there was a lot of things that the Parliament was talking about, and the Senate was also talking about it, about eliminating some colleges and reducing colleges. And I think this is not the appropriate way of saying it, but it is revisions of the curriculums to be in line with the tech world that we are facing now. Nobody actually can work without a smartphone. whether on a
Sure.
personal level or on a business
And also
level.
the speciality, sir.
So that has to
Yeah.
be not at university only, because if the student, if the Egyptian student is not equipped from day one about how to use these smartphones, this technology, not on a personal basis, but on a business, on a research basis, then whoever comes to a university will not be ready to understand what is going to be dictated or what we provide to them as curriculum. And so it is a fully integrated process that starts from high schools up to the universities. Anyway, it's a good step, it's a good initiative, but I think we need faster than this in this area, because definitely Egypt is attractive, as you said. Its geographic location is excellent, natural resources in all domains. You have the best tourism, you have the Suez Canal also, you have the remittances of Egyptians that are actually the brains who are there outside, and then you have exports. We hope that that will increase. But more than that, because when I teach branding and branding a nation, we talk about a couple of things that are the pillars of branding a nation. One of the pillars, believe it or not, is the human capital of this country.
Yeah.
Is the attractiveness of this country to attract, the attractiveness of this country to attract foreigners to come and study and reside in Egypt, not to be as refugees, but to be as those who have the brains to develop economies in a given country.
Yeah.
So imagine if this is how other countries brand themselves, then why not us? Especially that we have the human capital and you have the natural resources and you have the infrastructure ready. Not only that, the location also, as you mentioned. Not only that, we are part of the COMESA, we are part of the BRICS. And
We are Arab, Islamic, Mediterranean, African country, so as
it's
you
the only
kindly
country in the whole
mentioned,
world, with all due respect,
yeah.
that 3 religions actually have been developed in Sinai.
Yes.
The Islamic religion in Egypt, the Christians, and the Judaism. So what else?
We are waiting for the Grand Transfiguration, or at Tajalli al-A'zam. This is going to be, inshallah, a project which is going to be a gift from Egypt to humanity at large. Because this is Egypt, as you've kindly mentioned, and we should be that much proud
Yes,
of being Egyptians. I'm enjoying our discussion. And if you permit me, I'm going to return back to something which you've kindly mentioned, to increase the value of industrial investments by 10% during 2024. Because you're all the time, when it comes to statistics, you aim for more. And but in the same time, when we say that, we only announce the things which are already implemented on the ground. We are that transparent, saying what's going on, and we are not exaggerating, and we are not also underestimating what's taking place. Egypt aims to boost the value of its industrial investment by approximately 10%, according to the head of Egyptian Commercial Representation Authority, Yahya Al-Wathiq Billah, and he said that in an interview, stressing that the goal is to reach a minimum of 3.6 billion US dollars, surpassing the 3.3 billions recorded in 2023. This increase, I can say it moderate, weak, good, what? Okay. Poor?
You want my opinion,
Yeah.
answer, yeah? No, it's very weak.
Then
Let me tell you why.
Yes,
Because
okay.
I have to explain why it is weak. First of all, we've been through reforms, harsh reforms that the Egyptian government have done, and the Egyptian population have accepted it. And there must be a reason for that. We accepted these reforms because we look for a better future, right? And we support our government and our president. But at the same time, what else is missing now to export? What else is missing now to attract more foreign direct investment? And you saw once we did like this in terms of stability, economic stability, because of the fluctuations now.
I'm not defending that decision nor the numbers, but
No,
I want to tell you that they said when it comes to this, unfortunately there was a global economic issue when it comes to the years of COVID-19 and the lockdown and stuff like that, and after this the Russian-Ukrainian issue, the supply chain issue, crisis, the energy crisis, and all this. And when it comes to the Fed interest rates in America, for example, you are going to find that now they have, we are not that far from them. There, the interest rate hikes in America can have their negative impacts on the Middle East, including Egypt.
Well, Foreign direct investments will come regardless of all what you've been talking about. For one simple fact, you know what Fitch did?
Upgrading Egypt's position?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because of what we said about the...
Because of two things.
Okay, stability?
It's the political stability, we have it. There is
Okay.
no problem. I'm not talking about political stability because this is one of the
Economic
pillars of
reforms?
attacking. Economic reforms and specifically look at when they actually upgraded Egypt to be positive. When two things happened. When we attracted FDI in the vicinity of 50 billion by Ras Hikma, and it's only one project.
Yeah.
And the second one is that we actually did this economic reforms of fluctuating and freely moving our Egyptian. Two factors only surrounding all what you've been mentioning as the war in Gaza, as Ukraine war, and many other factors that definitely affected us and the whole region. But that should not be the reason why we should not go in a faster path. Why? Because once we did two things in less than 1 month, a big credit institutions like Fitch have approved us in a higher scale. Why? Because they said, you have it. You have the power to do it. You attracted investment, you did it, and the population accepted it. So that's why I think the percentage that you mentioned, since this was your comment, is weak, because we did a lot of things, and it's time now to move forward in a higher scale.
Faster.
Faster, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point.
And maybe one of the issues which will help to achieve this this faster move is going to be reviewing the amendments of Egypt's economic zone law, which you mentioned. In a strategic initiative to enhance Egypt's economic position, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli chaired a meeting on Tuesday, meaning just 3 days ago, to examine proposed revisions of the economic zones law, stressing the importance of this project, pointing out the necessity to update the law to reflect current global standards and to leverage Egypt's unique economic capabilities. Highlighting, of course, the need to have these comprehensive discussions and detailed analysis to ensure that the revised law meets the demands of the changing economic environment. I think the last sentence is the most important one. To meet the demands of the changing economic environment, meaning we should be that flexible to meet all the challenges we have and to eliminate all obstacles on the way.
That's right. Well, are we alone in terms of attracting foreign direct investment?
Of course not.
Of course not. And who are our competitors, with all due respect? Turkey is one, regardless of anything. And then UAE is second, Saudi Arabia third. So we have to be actually in line with what these countries are doing. So the agility and flexibility that Dr. Madbouli was talking about is of utmost priority. And that's why reforming the economic free zones authorities or law is very important. Let me also tell you why. Because in 2017, we have reformed our new investment law, Qanun al-Istismar. And then in 2020, the new customs law have been also reformed. So these are two laws now. The law on airports, on imports and export was also amended to allow the partnership between the public and the private sector. That was also done in 2018. And then the average reduction of 35% in customs. These are all laws, and so the last one that was in dire need now because to attract the FDI is what Dr. Mustafa Madbouli has been talking about in terms of the new economic zones, in terms of amendments of the law.
Also evaluating the feedback and insights from prior consultations with various ministries and stakeholders, meaning we are not starting from scratch, we are building or we are starting from where others end.
But that's why I mentioned the competitors. So when we study what the competitors are doing, we should be in line with them. I'm not going to say we want to be better, but at least in line, because anybody who wants to invest from outside Egypt, he will look at different scenarios and different alternatives. So if the alternative of Egypt is not as attractive as the other ones, then definitely, although he may like Egypt, and I've seen this a lot, people say, I like it, I love it, I like the country, I like the people, I like the, the environment and the climate, but my option is somewhere else. That's why what we are talking about is reforms are needed, amendments are needed, but in a faster pace.
Okay. Do you want to speak in detail about any of these amendments or any of these incentives, if I may call them incentives, tax exemption, for example, to give the land, or to make these amendments to let foreigners own lands for specific reasons, for industrial reasons, and for constructing their factories there? What for example, the golden license, fighting bureaucracy, eliminating all the obstacles in front of businessmen, invading new branches of investment like green or renewable energy, as we mentioned, innovative ideas, the banking and non-banking services. In all what I've said, for you, sir, what's more important or what should come first?
Well, first of all, tax exemption. That's number
Okay.
one. The length of it, the duration of it, and the location also is very important. So this is two things are important. The third one is the financial stability, not the political. As I said, it's no talk. It's finished. It's done. But what is there now is the issue of financial stability. And I've seen a lot of investors coming from outside. They're just waiting to see is Egypt going to be financially stable or not. And so that has to be seen. It's not in the hands of the government now until we see, the next steps after, there are Hikma investments that came to Egypt. What is next? Because
let me put my question in other words, sir. What are the features of financial stability do you want to see on the ground to be a source of attraction to direct foreign investments?
Well, the availability of hard currency. That's all. You need to import your raw materials. You need to actually to repatriate your profits. So this is not going to happen unless you are financially stable. And this is not going to happen unless you have a diversified sources of income.
Yep.
Because I heard the Minister of Finance, Dr. Mohammed Naid, when he was interviewed on one of the international channels when he was in Washington, D.C. And he talked,
I think attending the IMF meetings.
He mentioned a couple of things that our problem is that we relied on tourism and on the Suez Canal. It's true, but what is the solution here? The solution is diversity in other actually sources of income, and that's where the financial stability will come from. Still, if you put the blames on the Gaza war and what's happening in the Red Sea and of course on tourism, that's fine because it's affecting all of us. The question is, what did we do as an action? We should diversify renewable energy, manufacturing, agro-industrial in terms of exports. So that will give the stability of your hard currency will be actually available regardless of any crisis that takes place around you.
Sir,
so that's my point.
Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri was in Bengal in Gambia to participate in the Islamic Summit conference only 5 days ago or something. Right. And on the sidelines of the summit or the conference, he had many meetings, by the way, with his counterparts from all over the world. And one of the meetings was with Bangladesh Foreign Minister Hassan Mahmoud. Mahmoud thanked Shukri for hosting 1 million Rohingya refugees. We do have 9 to 10 million guests here.
11.
Whatever?
11.
11
million. That's what I heard.
The statistics are saying it's from 9 to 11. This is also a burden and something which we cannot deny. I'm not here defending the state or defending the pace of work, but I'm saying that these things, whenever they are found on the ground, I cannot deny that they do have their negative impact. True?
True.
Okay.
So what's your question?
No, I mean, when it comes, and I'm going to speak about other things on the ground, because when I see that the IFC Banking Finance Network, for example, upgrading Egypt's performance to advancing, and when I know that Fitch also upgraded the Egyptian performance all together in the very same period, at a time that we are hosting more than 10 million refugees or guests, as we always say that they are guests, in addition to all what we had, meaning that even if the pace of work it's a little bit slow, but we can have some excuses.
Well, I don't know whether you heard that the EU is going to give us 10 billion US dollars, euro, I'm sorry, 10 billion euro to combat the illegal immigration to Europe. And so this is partially to be funding the refugees that we have them in Egypt here. That's number one.
This was, I think, announced when there was...
When she visited,
it was a high-ranking delegation, including a lot even of EU prime ministers.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think Egypt now is, or the government in Egypt is moving in the right direction to show the problem that we are having now. It's not just the subsidies for 100+ million, but it's also that we are hosting a number. I'm not saying that they are, burden, but they are welcome, first of all of them. For one reason, that Egypt is always a hospitable country. This is a part of our culture. This is part of our DNA.
Of our destiny.
But still, when we see tourists coming, the first thing they talk about is not what they saw as pyramids. They talk about, honestly, when you look at the social media, they talk about the hospitality.
About the people.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is in our DNA. The question is, how can we actually utilize this part of DNA to get funds for those we welcome them? We never, actually, the Syrians, the Sudanese, and the Libyans, whoever they are here in Egypt, they are never actually treated as refugees. They have their own investments, they have their own businesses, and they're doing well. So there is something that we have to do in order to balance this out. And I think it's the government is moving in the right directions, asking for the IMF, asking for the World Bank, asking for EU, because partly when we host them, they are not going to immigrate to Europe and other countries. So it is a burden, but it is a manageable burden, put it that way.
So it can have a positive side of the coin, you mean?
It is. Refugees are never a positive sign, but we're trying to neutralize the negativeness of it.
Yeah, and unfortunately we are running out of time, but sir, I'm going to leave you with a promise to see you again in more episodes of our program.
It will be my pleasure always. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed our discussion off and on camera, by the way.
Me too.
Well, we were very much delighted and honored to have with us live here in the studio my dear guest, Dr. Ibrahim Hegazy, Professor of Marketing. And now I'm going to leave you with some of the most important economic files, or economic news to be accurate, which took place in the last 7 days. Many thanks for watching. With all my love, this was Nermeen Abdurrahman.